Welcome back to the Black Media Man Cave, and welcome to my review of the 2023 Netflix film, They Cloned Tyrone. This movie came out of nowhere for me, because up until its release, I was unaware of any of the pre-release hype for it. But as you all should know by now, going in blind is how I like it. Where do I even start with this film? Well, first off, I want to say how much of a breath of fresh air it is that this movie is a science fiction movie. It feels like I've been begging for years for black films to explore more genres, because there's only so many black trauma dramas that I can take in a single year. There are so many untapped categories that black movies have yet to explore, so I'm excited that recently there's been an explosion of variety when it comes to black films. Okay, now that I'm off that soapbox, They Cloned Tyrone comes to us from first-time director Joel Taylor. He also co-wrote the film alongside Tony Rettenmaier. There isn't a ton that could be said about the plot without outright giving the story away, so I'll try my best to refrain from spoilers until the end of this video. But it goes like this. A drug dealer named Fontaine, played by John Boyega, is shown going through his everyday hood life, talking to his moms, bonding with kids, collecting money, paralyzing rivals, just regular mundane stuff. It all comes across as nothing you've never seen before, especially when it comes to drug-related movies. That is until Fontaine is gunned down outside of the residence of a local pimp named Slick Charles, played by Jamie Foxx. Now, it's not uncommon for a movie to kill a main character right from the beginning, but what makes this movie different is that Fontaine wakes right back up, Groundhog Day style. Only it's the next day, and Fontaine goes about his routine, the same as the previous day, remembering nothing about what happened. That's about all I can say about the plot right now, but that first 15 minutes really hooks you into the story, and I was intrigued, but totally unprepared about where the movie was about to take me from here. Speaking of Groundhog Day, it was one of the many films that director Joel Taylor was inspired by, but he says his biggest inspiration was blaxploitation films, and that's the kind of movie he set out to make. I won't say They Cloned Tyrone is blaxploitation, but it definitely has some of its style and charm. Like, take Slick Charles for instance. His costume design is based off the clothing worn by Ron O'Neal as Priest in Superfly, but he's pretty much the only one with that design in the film. Then there's the retro filter that the movie has, reminiscent of the faded effect that a lot of 70s films have when you watch them back now, artifacts and all. There's also some 70s set design, like 8-track players, vehicles, and old furniture here and there. Perhaps the biggest homage to 70s blaxploitation, which is actually a love letter within a love letter, is the appearance of the Anaconda Malt Liquor brand, which all my Black Dynamite fans should be familiar with. Taylor is a huge fan of the film and requested to use the brand to fit with the 70s aesthetic. But then there's times where you might see a tube TV or even a cell phone. One of the characters even talks about blockchain and cryptocurrency, so it gives. Well, that's because the movie has an anachronistic time period, which basically means that it doesn't fit in any actual time period, at least not one that you can pin down. Essentially, it exists simultaneously in all, but also no time periods. This style was inspired by The Truman Show, and more recently, the movie It Follows, which also featured an anachronistic time period. Recently, I saw it described online as retro-futuristic, and I think that's the best way to put it. As you can already tell, I'm in love with the style and the design, but what about the story and the performances? Well, personally, I love the story. I always love when a movie drip feeds the details to you and doesn't just throw all the plot in your face at the start. It may seem like the title gives everything away, but trust me, that's just the surface. It touches on important topics and themes without being heavy-handed and preachy, and delivers a message that could easily have been dismissed as whining and whataboutism. But They Cloned Tyrone expertly spreads the accountability around and keeps what could be perceived as a tired trope fresh and entertaining. This is genre bending at its finest, and for someone like me, who's not the biggest fan of drug movies and TV shows, I can appreciate the movie for trying to put a unique spin on a topic that's not necessarily reinventing the wheel. It helps that the performances are mostly top-notch. John Boyega is in a lot of ways kind of underrated, and as weird as it is to say, I feel like Star Wars kind of derailed his career. So I'm glad to see him get back to roles like this, where he can flex his acting muscles and be at the forefront. It's a full circle kind of thing for me, because the very first time I saw him as an actor was in 2011's Attack the Block, another sci-fi horror comedy. He's excellent here in They Cloned Tyrone, and carried the movie on his back in more ways than one, without me saying too much. Jamie Foxx's career speaks for itself, but I think his character Slick Charles might be the weakest character here. I think because this was inspired by blaxploitation, they felt like it needed a pimp. But playing a pimp almost hurts Jamie's performance in my opinion. He pulls it off, but it feels like he's handicapped by the constraints of the character and might have been better served being written as someone else. Without seeing the movie, you know all the hallmarks already. He's gonna cuss at and threaten to beat his girls, he's gonna dress a certain way, and he's gonna drive a certain car and use certain buzzwords. Honestly, there's been so many classic pimp characters over the decades, it's almost impossible to pull off an original and memorable one, so that's the biggest problem here. The biggest surprise for me was Teyonah Parris. Not because I didn't think she can act, I've been a fan of hers for a while now, but mostly because she keeps proving time and time again how versatile she is. She plays a prostitute named Yo-Yo, and if I had never seen her before, I would think this character is who Teyonah is on and off camera. Her ability to switch it up for whatever movie she's in doesn't get enough recognition. In this film, she plays a sassy, well, hood rat, for lack of a better term, but one with ambition. When you watch the film, keep in mind, this is the same woman who's about to be playing an entirely different type of character in an upcoming Marvel film. So it feels like I love everything about the film. Is there anything that I don't like? Well, yeah, but not much. My biggest gripe with the movie, which may not bother anybody else, is the language. Now I'm the last person who has a problem with profanity. It has a purpose when the scene calls for it, but in They Cloned Tyrone, in most cases, it really doesn't call for how often it's used. It kind of exposes a weakness in the writing, and I'm mixed about it. On one hand, it fits the characters because of the environment they exist in. On the other hand, sometimes a string of profanity comes out just for the sake of it, with the person saying it not actually saying anything at all. I guess what I'm trying to say is, a bunch of the profanity-laced sentences could have been used for more important character and world building. It was just a minor annoyance for me, so it didn't really detract me from liking the film. My second dislike is that the second act kind of drags a little bit, and one scene in particular could have been cut by at least 15 to 20 minutes. At this point, I'm going to discuss a few spoilers about the plot and the ending of the film. If you haven't already seen it, go ahead and skip to the end of this video. I'll put a timestamp to the grade in the comments below. Got it? Good. So if you've seen the movie already, then you know that the plot revolves around the fictional town of the Glen, being used as part of an experiment that includes mind control, manipulation through products and environmental factors, and yes, even cloning. It's revealed that Fontaine and Slick Charles are in fact clones themselves, and that explains how Fontaine was able to come back from the dead and not remember what happened the previous night. The only reason he even has memories to begin with is because they are implanted in his brain once activated. I like the way the plot uses science fiction to try to explain away everyday black problems. Their behaviors aren't inherent, but instead exist in the stuff we like. The food and drinks, the music, the hair products, etc., are not only presented as detrimental tools used by the villains, but are also in a lot of ways detrimental to us in real life. This is all clever stuff, and doubles as a message to not only change your lifestyle for the better, but also how removal of certain things from the community will be better for us as a whole. As I said before though, the movie doesn't beat you over the head with this, they keep it subtle. I also like how not everybody is clone worthy. It's revealed that Yo-Yo isn't a clone because she's basically unremarkable. Only the most important people, or another way to say that, the most problematic people are cloned. People like drug dealers and pimps. Kinda like in real life, how we get carbon copies of people, say like in the music industry, with very little positivity, but with a lot of influence. Then there's the ending. It's revealed that the man behind the cloning is a geneticist who's the original Fontaine, if that's really his name. He's old, indicating that this has been going on for a while, and he gave all of his clones of himself his memories, making them think that they are living a real life, when in reality, it's planted. The movie was a home run up to this point, until it's revealed that old Fontaine's master plan is to turn black people white? Yeah, this reveal was kind of weak to me. I get what he's saying about assimilation being better than annihilation, but for a guy who's supposed to be so smart, he should know how incredibly stupid and short-sighted that is. I'm guessing that's the point. He's a self-hating Negro who's hurt, bitter, and traumatized and doesn't see the value in his race. So he believes if we were more like them, things will improve in our communities. This isn't a new concept. Black scholars have argued about the effects of assimilation for decades. It just feels like this movie needed something a little deeper to bring it all home. Regardless, taken as a whole, They Cloned Tyrone is a fantastic movie that's well acted, has a great cast, and for the most part, delivers a compelling story that I think people will be talking about for years to come. Even with it not completely sticking the landing, it still finds a way to leave you smiling, especially if you stick around for the epilogue and the end credits song. My grade for They Cloned Tyrone is an A-. I think the movie will be considered a classic for years to come, and I'm excited to see where director Joel Taylor goes from here. And if you're excited about where I'm going from here, make sure you drop a like and a subscribe, and tell your friends about my channel. And I'll see you back here for my next video. Until then, I'll holler at you.